So, the learning objectives of this first part, that is the role of counselors, is to understand the different role of counselors, to identify the areas where these counselors work. Now friends, as we have already mentioned that the role of counselors is a very important aspect in the whole counseling process. Basically, what is the role of the counselors? What do the counselors do? Now for layman, it is very common thing that we have heard people telling that I very usually counsel people. Now what exactly is counseling? So basically, the counseling is nothing but it is to improve the mental health and the emotional well-being of the clients. The another important role of the counselors is that the counselor has to use all his knowledge that he has gained till today and all that research work that he has studied, it has to be used for therapeutic work. Another important role of the counselor is to help the clients with mental health conditions. Now, who will be the clients of this particular counselors? So, they can be anyone. They can be small children, they can be adults, they are families, sometimes they are groups, youth, even people from the old age group can be the clients. Now let us have a look at what are the areas where counselors work. So these are some of the areas which we can see over here. Now counselors work in this field where they are related to certain life issues of people. Now if you want to be a counseling psychologist, these are some of the areas where you'll need to work. So the life issues of people are bereavement, that is if the person has lost somebody or there is a death in the family, there is big grief or sadness, at that time people may seek the advice of a counselor. After that, another important thing is when people face some kind of domestic violence. Now today we have been listening so much about domestic violence. There are a number of issues that are taking place within the family. It may be between the father and the daughter, father and children, parents and children, between the husband and wife. So all these issues are dealt with in the issue of domestic violence. Then we have relationship difficulties. Now friends, you all are aware of this. Even as college going students, number of times students are related or they are very much disturbed because of certain relationship issues in life. So a counseling psychologist helps people to resolve these relationship difficulties. After that, there are some very important life issues like sexual abuse. Now so much has been talked about this in media. Lot of people have been talking about sexual abuse nowadays. In the olden days, this was considered as a taboo and people really did not speak about it. But today, people do approach counselors with regards to problems of sexual abuse. Next important life issue is that of trauma. If somebody is affected by a big traumatic situation, then too they will be affected mentally, they are emotionally disturbed, and at such times they will consult a psychologist. After this, there are some mental health issues that the counselor actually attends to. Now, mental health issues are not that very serious, but they do have a prolonged effect on people and hence they also have to be dealt with seriously. Among them, the first one is anxiety. Now, who does not know about anxiety? See, right from the time of birth or before the child is born, the parents are very anxious. Many a times they are anxious about the process of birth. They are anxious about the delivery, whether it will be a normal delivery or it will be a cesarean delivery. The anxiety of the parents is somehow percolated among the children. And right from small babies to adults and old age people, everybody faces this problem of anxiety. The next issue here is that of depression. Today, lot has been talked about depression and we have heard about so many people who are suffering from the problem of depression. Even prolonged anxiety later leads to depression. Then another common disorder these days is eating disorder. So in eating disorders, we have two major disorders. One is anorexia and second is bulimia. So either the person overeats or the person actually stops eating due to the fear of obesity. Then another major mental health issue nowadays is psychosis. Psychosis is majorly related to various mental disorders. Here people face number of problems such as hallucinations, delusions. They get such kind of symptoms and they are part of mental disorders. Then you have PTSD, which is another mental health issue. This is post traumatic stress disorder. After this, there are some of the fields where counselors work, and we can have a look at these fields. I have mentioned very few fields over here, but today let me tell you that psychology is one such branch of study that is touched all walks of life. Today, each and every person has been affected by various mental issues, and he needs the help of counselors. So these are few areas what I have mentioned. The first one is number of counselors go for private practice. We have heard of people, and we have seen many people who who practice privately. Then you have consultants who work in various organizations, firms as consultants. We have people who are doing research in this area. We have healthcare services. So these are people who are working with hospitals, patients, NGOs, rehabilitation centers. Then you have number of counselors who are working in the field of education. So right from schools, colleges, in various educational institutes, we find counselors working. Another important area today is prison and legal services, where you can find number of psychological counselors. After that, let us go through some of the responsibilities of the counselors. In that, the first one is to undertake assessments. So here, the psychological counselor, he undertakes assessment of the mental health situation of the client. Then he formulates number of psychological explanations for these kind of behaviors. After that, he establishes collaborative relationships with the client, and as mentioned earlier, this relationship is based on trust and respect, and not to forget confidentiality, which is very important. After that, another major responsibility of a consulting psychologist is to implement and plan the psychological treatment. So once he looks at the client and assesses the problem, after that he plans and implements the treatment. Next is he has to empower the client. So the dependency on the counselor has to be stopped slowly, step by step, and the counselor has to empower the client to help resolve his own issues. Next is continuous personal and professional development. After that, some few other responsibilities are to evaluate the treatment outcomes, to collaborate and advise his colleagues, communicate some complex and clinically sensitive issues with the client, with his family members and other caregivers. Another important area is to receive regular clinical and professional supervision from superiors, then to contribute to research and service evaluation. And sometimes, after a lot of practice and training, the counselor also works as a mentor for the other trainee psychologists.